Is there something that you wish you knew when you were starting out?
I wish I hadn't had to suffer, and I'm sure you all feel that.
Yeah.
The insecurities, and I almost want to say we waste so much time, but I think that's kind of the gig.
Yeah.
Being a human being is that we go through this suffering, and we get conditioned by society, and then we spend the last part of our life hopefully letting all that stuff go. But I have two grandnephews. I get videos from them, and it's nothing has touched them yet. They're a year and a half, and the other guy's an infant. And there's the wonder. You just see everything is brand new to them and exciting. It's just such a joy to get these videos from them and see them.
Right.
They're so open and free.
We were chatting a little bit backstage and talking about you growing up in Chicago, and that's sort of where I want to start. Grew up Southside Chicago,
Right.
Yeah.
Far south, a town called Dalton.
Yeah.
Familiar? Really?
Yeah. So what was your childhood like? I mean, do you remember, kind of like the early interests and hobbies that were kind of occupying you at the time? And also, of course, what gave you the first itch to start performing?
I don't remember a moment where I didn't want to be an actress. I love television. I watched TV all the time. I would get the TV guide from the Chicago Tribune on Sunday, and I'd pull that out and I'd start marking what I wanted to watch. I would watch television into like the middle of the night. And then I loved doing plays. I remember the first play I went to.
I was very young, so that the memory is almost kind of misty. But it was in a high school, the local high school, and it was in the gymnasium, and the lights went out, and when they came up, it was like this whole world. And I remember there was a bird in a cage, a kid playing a bird in a cage, and I wanted them to free the bird. I was so invested in it, and from the very first, I saw the theater as being such a magical thing. And of course, I love television too, and I wanted to get into that box and be a Brady Bunch sibling.
Which, ironically, we'll get to that because you
Right.
have a Brady Bunch connection.
Yeah.
But, was that a family affair? Like, did you watch TV as a family growing up? And
And it was the old people in the audience. It was appointment television. There were in Chicago, it was Channel 3 or Channel 2, 5, 7, 9. 11 was our public television, and then we got Channel 32. That was in black and white. It wasn't even in color. And the Chicago White Sox, their games were on. Are you from Chicago? Yeah. The Sox were on, and I was a big baseball fan. Yeah, South Side, but I didn't like the Sox because they were in black and white on Channel 32, so I became a Cubs fan because they were in living color on WGN Channel 9. But I didn't go out into the neighborhood and tell everybody I was a Cubs fan. I didn't, because the rivalry was real. There wasn't my wanting to be an actress. It was baffling to my family. It was like, you want to do what they do on television, and what you can't do that.
I mean, was it just because it was just so?
It was such a weird thing to want.
Yeah.
Yeah, nobody else wanted it. Nobody. I didn't have any friends who wanted it. It was just my parents thought it was very weird, and I remember I was about 12, and I was doing Guys and Dolls at Dirksen Junior High, and Ronnie Howard came into town, or maybe he was Ron at that point, and he was promoting Happy Days, and although I am a big lesbian, I was in love with Ron Howard. I couldn't get enough of him. He moved me. He was, I don't know if you read his book, The Boys. Oh, it's so good. He was so wholesome and so wonderful, and he wouldn't make me kiss him. I just knew that he would not. So I loved him so much, and so he was on WGN radio, and I called in, and I had the tape recorder, how you press play and record, and I recorded it. And I said, I'm 12, I'm in sixth grade, and I want to be an actress. And he said, stay in school. He said, do plays in school. And I said, I'm in Guys and Dolls with the heaviest Chicago accent I've ever heard. And he said, that's really good. And so I was just so excited that I got to meet him, and I had it on tape. And I really took it to heart that he told me I could do it. So I knew I would do it. And do you know who I worked with about 3 days ago? Ron Howard on Only Murders in the Building.
Does he know this story? I mean,
Oh, he does. And the funny thing is, he's I was on Jimmy Fallon during doing Glee, and I was a guest on Jimmy Fallon. And Ron Howard, I wrote a book about how I was in love with him, and Ron happened to be doing another show in 30 Rock. So I'm out there with Jimmy, and we're having our interview, and who comes in with flowers but Ron Howard? I know, that was so great. He said, I don't understand your crush on me. I said, it's really confusing me. So anyway, it was really nice to see him the other day. He was so lovely.
In addition to Ron Howard, were there any other actors at the time that you were like that?
John Travolta, I fell in love with him too.
Right.
And the Olivia Newton-John crush was so heavy that I had to go, okay, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And so when they announced Grease was going to be with both of them, I almost imploded. I remember I was at the A&P. I was at the grocery store, and I looked. It was on a like a Star magazine or something. John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John are going to do Grease, and I was like, oh my God! And I saw it probably 100 times. That and Sound of Music too. I saw.
That's a great therapy story. I don't know if you've had this, but that's you could really unpack a lot.
Yeah, really, yeah.
Well, and beyond just idols,
Yeah.
like that. I mean, were there performers that you saw specifically? You were like, that's
Carol Burnett.
Carol Burnett, of course.
Yeah, Carol Burnett. The Carol Burnett show. Again, we would remember the tape recorder, record. We would record the audio of the Carol Burnett show, and my brother and I would act it out. So someone's saying, "Yeah, who's doing that?" Yeah, And so I thought, and one of the things I loved about her was that it was the Carol Burnett show, but it was 5 other people, and you might as well have called it the Lyle Wagner, Harvey Korman, because she gave but she was so magnanimous and so generous, and she didn't want it to be just about her, and I love that. I don't ever want it to be just about me. I don't want to be alone up there. I love the back and forth, and I love being part of an ensemble, and so I watched that, and I think it was a preposterous fantasy to think that I ever get to do that or meet her, which of course now I have because my dreams have come true. But I knew I wanted to do that sketch, and I wanted to make people laugh, and I wanted to, do it with other folks and be part of a group. So yeah.
So how did it become a serious thing for you? I mean, that you knew that this is what you actually wanted to devote your life to. When was that happening? I mean, you went to school for theater, right?
Yeah, I knew in high school I wanted to do it, and I was cast in a one act. And I remember at the audition, everybody laughed. I played the king, starting this pattern of playing men's roles. I played the king in a play called The Ugly Duckling. And I got a lot of laughs at the audition. And then when I got the part in the first day of rehearsal, I got 0 laughs. And I quit. I said, I'm going to join the tennis team. And my mother was like, what are you doing? This is what you want to do. And the director came up to me, what are you doing? I said, no, I don't know. I was so afraid. And so I kind of got the reputation in high school as a quitter. And I didn't get cast again.
Right.
Yeah, so that was hard until Godspell, our theater arts class, did a production of Godspell, and everybody had to be in it. So, yeah.
Got it rolled.
Yeah. So, but that taught me a lesson that, I walked away from it because it meant that much to me. I was so scared. So I vowed never to be scared again. And I never say no. Every once in a while now I'll say no. But for the most part, I'm like, yep, I'm in.
Well, to transition sort of to your early working career, that was a question I have for you. Was there definitely a period where you felt like you had to say yes to everything, that you couldn't be choosy?
Well, yeah. I was afraid that if I said no to something that I'd never be asked again. So I ended up doing a lot of silly things, but they were all fun. And I got really lucky. I fell in with a really great group of improvisers and sketch comedy people. This is after college and everything in Chicago, and we came out here and we started doing a show at the Tamarind, which is now it was UC.
I think it's the UCB, the one on
right.
Franklin. Yeah.
Yeah, in Franklin. And we would do a show called the Beechwood Palace Jubilee. And we would do different sketches. And that's how I met like all the Groundling people, Will Ferrell and Anna Gasteyer and Chris Kattan and Jennifer Coolidge. They would come over and do stuff with us. And Molly Shannon. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about Chicago, especially, as we were talking about this a little bit backstage too, but Chicago is like, the birthplace of American improvisational comedy. It is, in my opinion, where you go if you want to learn how to do it.
He knows.
And I was comedy adjacent, I would call it.
Yeah.
A lot of improv friends. So tell me about like finding that kind of community there, because I think that's what's so special about Chicago improv is that it really is its own, kind of bubble and community within the
I
city.
didn't know that I wanted. In fact, I really improv still scares the hell out of me. I was a classically trained actress at that point. I went to Cornell and I was in their professional training program, and we learned how to fence, and we learned how to. We did ballet 3 times a week, and we did Shakespeare, and all the classical stuff, and we also did Sam Shepard, and we did a variety of stuff, but it was kind of a classical training program. And so, as my friend said, I have the arrogance of the classically trained. So, but when I got to Chicago, I joined a Shakespeare company, and by the time I left, I remember the guy said to me, "Don't let the door hit you in the butt on your way out," that kind of a thing. I was pretty arrogant, but I would, in order to get into the professional companies, you had to audition for them. So I'm talking like the Goodman, the Steppenwolf at that point, that wasn't having general. They were called generals. So it was Goodman, Northlight. Oh God, I can't think of any other, but there were like 3 others. Victory Gardens. And you would get on the phone and you would call, and it would be busy. So you put it on redial. You call, and then finally someone picks up, and you get an audition. So you have to do a classical monologue and a contemporary monologue, and every once in a while they'd say, sing 16 bars of something. So one of the auditions that I got was a Second City audition for the touring company, and I thought, well, I don't know that I know how to do this, but I went to it because I said no to nothing, and I improvised, and I thought I was terrible, and they invited me to be in the company, and I started touring with Second City, and I loved it. Well, first of all, it wasn't improv. The touring wasn't improv so much; it was set scenes, and I just love sketch. And yes, right, isn't it? Yeah, it's the best. And it's so great at Second City. You're playing a bunch of different characters for like the hour and a half show, and you're basically like throwing on a wig, maybe a sweater to indicate the character. So it's kind of simple in terms of the stagecraft of it, but that it's all in the character. And I worked with some really great people, Greg Holloman. Steve Carell, Stephen Colbert was there. So I worked with all those guys. It was a really kind of fertile time there. And a guy named Mike McCarthy, who was so wonderful too. Jill Talley, I don't know if you know these people, but Bonnie Hunt, I was her understudy. I know I got to do her stuff. Her stuff was amazing. I understudied her on main stage. So I got to do some of the best conceived female roles because it was kind of a boys' game at that time. So yeah, and am I off track? Oh, so I got that job, and that kind of opened up the whole world for me.
Yeah. And something, and this is, I'm giving you all a recommendation now because I was really excited about prepping for this. There's a show you were in Chicago at the Nuance Theater called the Real Live Brady Bunch. Created by Joey Soloway and Faith Soloway.
Yeah, she was Jill back then. She's Joey now. Yeah. And Faith Soloway, her sister. And Faith was our piano player at touring company. So we were really good friends. Yeah, we came out of the closet together, too. A little bit of making out, but...
yeah, of course. Yeah. Chicago improv. I mean, you're figuring it all out.
Yeah.
But the premise,
little light petting.
Yeah, the premise was...
But we were friends.
We've been there. Yeah. But the premise of it is that it's just truly
The scripts.
The scripts from the
We
Brady Bunch.
loved the Brady Bunch, and it was a. Do you know the Brady Bunch, young lady? No, you have to watch this. It's a very wholesome show.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody has a childhood like the Brady Bunch. It's nobody pitches a fit in front of their parents, goes up to their room, slams the door, and a second later they're like, "You want to talk?" That didn't happen in any of our houses. So we loved it and hated it at the same time. But we did it with great affection. We actually went to secondhand stores and got 1970s clothes. They all smelled. It was just terrible. The smell backstage was terrible. And we used the actual scripts from the Brady Bunch. Jill would watch it on TV and put it on what probably beta tape or something at that point, and she would pause it and then type it up. Pause it and type it up. So that's how we got the scripts. And she asked me, "Do you want to be Carol or Alice?" And I was like, "Oh, I got to be Carol. I want to be the mom." And my best friend Mary, who actually looks like Alice, was Alice. And so it was. And then we had these 28-year-olds playing 8-year-olds.
Yeah.
And
Incredibly, it's all on YouTube. I encourage everyone to find these.
Jill did, Faith did the music. So ba-da-da-dum, ba-dum, bum, 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 bum. All the incidental stuff. She did the actual stuff, and it was a hit. The first night we did it at the Annoyance Theater on Broadway. That's where the first one. Broadway in Belmont is where it was actually, and there was a line around the theater and up a block for people to get in, and it was such a fire hazard. It was this horrible building, and we found old couches, and so we threw old couches. And so people were lounging on these old couches and these smelly chairs, and you were allowed to smoke because it's Mick Napier. You're allowed to smoke and drink. So everybody was loaded. Everybody's smoking. We were drunk. Plug your ears. And but the show was just. I remember when the lights came up and they revealed us in our first scene, and my heart was pounding, and the audience was screaming. We had to stop. We had to just stop and pause and let everybody get over themselves because it was just too much. The terrible wigs, the awful clothes, and the kind of overly earnest acting. Oh, it was such a highlight of my life.
It's truly incredible. It's a beautiful little time capsule.
Beautiful thing.
Yeah. But then let's start talking about, I imagine that didn't pay very well, the Annoyance Theater, if at all.
The Annoyance Theater didn't pay at all.
Maybe you got a ticket for a
But we
drink.
went to New York, and we all got $900 a week because Jill knows how to push a deal.
Right.
Yeah.
And then
She
came
was
to LA.
25 years old at the time. And she got us at the Village Gate in New York, and we had a professional Broadway producer, and each of us got $900 a week, which was just crazy money.
So another very early film role, kind of a blink and you miss it almost. I just rewatched the film.
The Fugitive, yes.
You play a doctor that
Yeah.
an old colleague
Liver specialist.
Yes, a colleague of Harrison Ford's.
A colleague of Harrison
Doctor.
Ford.
You're helping solve the case.
Yeah,
right?
the liver sample mystery.
Yeah. What was that? I mean, that's a big first thing.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
I mean, what was
I
that
worked
like?
with him.
Yeah,
With,
one scene with Harrison, right?
With Harrison Ford, yeah. And I had a couple of scenes,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
one was cut, but I ended up having 2 scenes in the movie, but it was pivotal. So we were shooting this, and Harrison was not happy with the script, and he said, "Jane," I think he actually called me Janie. He said, "Janie, we're going into my trailer and we're going to rewrite this." And I said, "Okay." And so it was raining out, and he took me, by the arm under his umbrella, and we went into his trailer and we reworked it because it didn't make any sense, and we made it make sense. And we ended up, kind of having a really great scene together. And I don't know what made him think that I would be able to write this with him.
I mean, the natural improvisational skill.
Yeah, I
you
guess.
exhibited.
I have no idea. I mean, he had just met me that day.
Right.
Yeah. He said, "You're coming with me."
Yeah, and you don't say no to Harrison.
No,
Ford.
no.
Absolutely
And he
not.
was so nice. He was
Right.
so great. He was terrible to everybody else, but he was really nice to me. It was a bad day for him that day. He had it with some aspect of the shooting the thing, and but he was really sweet to me. And I was probably 30, so
Yeah.
baby actor.
Yeah, but around that time, you were doing a lot of commercials and TV work,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
there was one commercial that was also very pivotal, right? The
Oh yeah,
Frosted
that was
Flakes.
in L.A. But
Oh, it
I
was in
did a lot
LA.
of commercials in
Okay.
Chicago too. But I was in L.A. and it was 1999, and I probably you know this if you're an actor. I don't think this happens so much anymore, but you'll watch commercials and there are the same people in them. This is how it used to be. And then you kind of wear out your welcome and you don't get another commercial for the rest of your career. But it was the year of Jane Lynch, 1999. And I had the Nexium commercial. I don't know if you're familiar with my work in the Nexium commercial, but it bought me a house. And so yes, I went to an audition. It was a callback for a Kellogg's Frosted Flakes commercial, and I walk into the room, and it's Christopher Guest as the director. So I had seen Waiting for Guffman, and I remember just falling apart. I saw it at the Angelica in New York, and the people in the row with me too. We were all like, we were all there by ourselves, ha ha, ha laughing. So I was just thrilled, and I got the role. And I did a Kellogg's Frosted Flakes commercial with Chris. And at lunch, he said to me, I do movies. And I'm like, yeah. Yeah, I know. And he said, maybe we'll get to work together again. And within about 6 months, yes. But about 6 months, I ran into him at a restaurant. Maybe it wasn't even 6 months. I ran into him at the newsroom in Beverly Hills. I think it's gone now. And he said, oh, yeah. I forgot about you, but come to my office. And he gave me the part with Jennifer Coolidge.
I mean, that was definitely the first thing that like made its impact on me that I saw you. Because I was such a huge fan of those films.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, talk about finding an ensemble that is like, I mean, he picks the best players.
Yeah.
And the people that he knows are the most adept at that, at
Yeah.
what he's asking them to do. I mean, what is it like to come into that kind of... I mean, Guffman was really the first of that iteration of it, obviously.
You go back to Spinal Tap was probably the very first, but
Yes.
Rob Reiner directed
but
that.
Guffman, and then I feel like Best in Show really exploded.
Yeah, Best in Show was, but that was well, I mean, I loved Guffman. I wasn't in it, but I think it might be my favorite.
Yeah.
Because being of the theater.
Yes.
And you know that. We're going to Broadway. No, you're not. No, you're not. I was going to say something and I lost my train of thought. Anyway, go ahead.
But right after that, you did A Mighty Wind about 3 years later. So
right.
On...
Oh, I was going to say about Chris doesn't audition people. He said he can tell in like a minute and 60 seconds whether someone can do this. He said he can just tell just by sitting with them. Yeah.
Now, so when you're improvising for Christopher Guest, I mean, there's a script in the sense that there's an idea of where
there's
scenes
a regular
are going.
script, but no dialogue.
Right. So is that less? I mean, you're probably not as terrified about improvising.
I was then, in the beginning.
Was
sure.
it still kind of a challenge, like knowing,
Once I knew the drill.
Yeah.
So the drill is that you do all of your work at home.
Mm-hmm.
And some people actually, like Fred Willard, came up with lines.
Yeah.
Yeah, God bless him. And he would give you your lines to set him up for his joke. So that's how he worked. Chris did nothing. He just showed up and he would work on his character. But I actually would get some get some, I don't want to say catchphrases, but I figure out how the person talked. And I would, the way I worked on it was, you overpack. John Michael Higgins always says, for these things, you overpack. You really do your homework on the person. Because you really, it's almost like, if I can compare it to jazz, you really have to know how to play your instrument in order to earn the right to improvise. So we really had to pack heavy for these things. But like I said, Chris barely did anything, and he was genius. But I worked pretty hard on it. So did Jennifer. So we kind of bonded on that. It was our first time, and we were in Vancouver together, and we hung out a lot. And when you hang out with Jennifer, you kind of have to be her caretaker. There's just, you forgot your wallet. I'll go out in the rain and get it. Yeah. She shows up outside, and it's pouring rain, and she's just got on a sweater. And you're like, well, here, take my coat, and I'll go get us an umbrella. But she was so much fun. She's just an otherworldly human being. So we figured our stuff out on our days off,
Yeah.
we would kind of work stuff out. And
I mean, that's such an interesting. I mean, then you did it again with A Mighty Wind, and
Right.
then For Your Consideration and
Right.
Mascots. Is it? Does he kind of? Does he put you with people that he thinks you're going to vibe with, or is it really just about like your character makes sense with this character? And
it does, but I think he does like mixing it up.
Yeah.
Like I got to work with Fred Willard
Yeah.
in For Your Consideration, and what did Catherine O'Hara came up to me after our first scene. Because I set him up for all the jokes that he wanted to make. I didn't get in one word. And she came up to me and said, "You have just been Willarded." Yeah, he was a gem, just a gem. Yeah,
man.
so good.
I would say so. I was reading your Wikipedia page, and this is what I didn't know until this week. You were originally in The Aviator, playing Amelia Earhart.
Amelia Earhart,
and that scene was cut. Yes, it was. So that kind of sets up, as an actor, how do you deal with stuff like that? The rejection. I mean, did you find out about that? And you're like,
look,
what
I had to ask you if I was cut.
Yeah,
I didn't even know.
Fair.
Well,
you didn't call Marty and be like, what the fuck?
So that was Martin Scorsese. So I showed up, and it was really, I think I had one line where I say to Leonardo DiCaprio, "Be careful up there." I really think that's all it was. And so, yeah, I didn't suffer that too much.
But she would know.
Yeah.
She would know the best.
Right. She knows about being safe. Yeah.
So that was 2004.
Use your navigation.
Yes, yeah. So 2005, I feel like another big breakout performance for you was 40-Year-Old Virgin.
Yes.
A real scene-stealing role.
Oh, thank you.
I just turned 40, so rewatching that, it's like horrifying to imagine that that's old.
Yeah.
Because I was also 21 when it came out.
Yeah.
But that is also like a funny crew, a funny ensemble. How much of that was, as loosey-goosey, I would say.
It was loosey-goosey, but there was a script for sure.
Yeah.
And this was a character that Steve Carell had created when he was at Second City.
Mm-hmm.
And he had done Anchorman with Judd. Judd was he didn't direct that. 40-Year-Old Virgin was his first directing
Right, yes,
job.
that's correct.
So I have to thank Steve's wife, Nancy Walls, who said, "You have so many men in your movie. You've got to read Jane for the store manager," which of course was a man's role. So he and I improvised that whole thing in the where I'm coming on to him and inviting him that I'd be happy to take your virginity from you. So that happened in the audition. So that was fun. So and then we improvised it, of course, and and it was like I said, there was a script too.
But that's someone you've known for a long time.
Yeah.
Is that did you that camaraderie, that history help that moment?
Yeah, well, we didn't
together?
work together too much in
Right.
Chicago, but he was actually in a different touring company, but we crossed paths on stage a couple of times, so we knew each other socially. And but yeah, that does help. It does. There's just a trust. There's a trust, and you throw him the ball, and he's going to throw it back.
Right.
So
Yeah. Another performance that I really love. There's a moment in this movie. I've rewatched the clips several times. It's Julie and Julia. You're playing Julia Child's sister,
Right.
played by Meryl Streep, obviously. When you show up, your arrival scene is one of the
Train
funniest
station?
things. Yes, just unbridled joy from both of you. You're both tall, giant women just screaming at the top of your lungs.
Yeah.
Just like geese. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I'm very happy to hear that, because that was the thing that Nora Ephron is very close to her sisters, especially Delia, her younger sister, and so it was so important to her that because these sisters, they were so close, and they're from Pasadena, believe it or not. They sounded like they were schooled in England, but they weren't. They were very upper class, and had kind of that elocution lesson accent. And the sister, and I'm forgetting her name, she is 6'4" in 1948 or something like that, and Julia was 6'2". So, and they're in Paris with these tiny people. So there's some really funny photos of the two of them, but they loved each other, and they were not only big, physically, but their joie de vivre was just off the charts. They loved each other. They loved laughing, and she was really Nora was really excited about that aspect of it. So that was the first. No, we shot something. That was the first day though that we shot that. No, I just saw Nora going. She was so happy, and I had just met Meryl Streep. I mean, she's Meryl Streep.
Right. I mean, I would be excited. I would act that way
Yeah.
if I got off a train and saw
Yeah.
Meryl Streep.
Well, I was really, really nervous,
Yeah.
but you just get over it. And she was so available to that level of, joy and happiness, and
Yeah.
so it was great.
Is there, to talk about how nervous you were with Meryl Streep, was there anyone else at that stature to you that you were like, when you worked with them maybe for the first time, you're like, oh, whoa.
Annette Bening, and I didn't even work with her, but I did. We were in the same movie, and I could not get over myself. She was so nice to me, and we were kind of sitting like this, and we were kind of small talking, and I just couldn't stop thinking this is Annette Bening, and I was such a big fan, and she was so kind to me, and wanted to just be normal.
Yeah.
And I could not. I remember I was trying so hard to relax that I was literally sitting in my chair like, yeah. Could not get over it. Oh, but like working with somebody. I mean, Meryl Streep, of course, that was. But once it's, you're really just two actors diving into it, but it's that suffering ahead of time going, oh my God. I'm trying to.
Preparing to be on the same level.
Yeah,
with
well,
someone
I'm
like
working
Meryl
with
Streep. Yeah.
Steve Martin now, and
Yeah.
I was a big fan of his as well, and he's so good. And I was nervous, and he was great. And now it's old hat working with old Steve. Yeah, at any time they're like big stars, especially like Carol Burnett, going back to my childhood where it was still in the preposterous fantasy that I would ever get to do what they're doing and meet them, work with them. And here I am trying to, I'm like, we're a mano, and it's you have to step outside of yourself and go, this is just absurd and wonderful.
When did you learn to accept that you were kind of on the same
I don't know
level?
that I've completely
yeah.
accepted it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it still kind of knocks me
Yeah.
knocks me over.
Well, to get back to the filmography a bit, another TV show, great ensemble show, Party Down,
Right.
which came back.
Yeah.
Like when a show comes back, that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah,
'Cause that
12 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Because that shows that there's an audience for it and that people are actually listening to
Right.
that audience. I mean, what was that, like that crew? I mean, again, like some of the funniest people.
Well, no
in the
one
world.
was established as a
Right.
star yet. So
Yeah.
Adam Scott, he had done a couple of things, and Ken Marino had, it did The State
Mhm.
with all those guys. Who else was in it? Lizzie Kaplan. It was not Lizzie Kaplan yet. And we were making, it was Star's first. It was their second show. They were doing, what was that big biblical one that they did? Kirk Douglas's I Am Spartacus.
Spartacus, yes.
They were doing Spartacus and Party Down.
Right,
Those were
very
stars.
different, yeah.
Stars didn't know who it was. It was
Yeah.
trying to find its identity. And they left us completely alone. And our showrunners too were doing Cupid on ABC at the
Okay.
time. So they couldn't be there a lot. So it was basically Fred Savage was a director and Brian Gilbert was a director. So it was the 5 of us or 6 of us and the directors and the crew. And we no notes.
Right.
We were making this in a bubble, and we were having a blast.
Yeah, I was gonna add, like having no. I mean, I've heard
Yeah.
from people like when a showrunner is present and they're all the time and available. That's great. Is it
Yeah.
the opposite? Also
Well, your
great.
showrunner protects you,
Yeah.
and our showrunners weren't there a lot because of Cupid.
Mhm.
So, but we didn't need protection.
Right.
It was like they were there, though. I mean, they were watching all the takes and stuff. They were working very hard, but they had to be in Chicago doing that show. So we were like on our own, and it was so much fun.
Yeah. So the next show, the big show, is Glee.
Yes.
An Emmy win, 3 nominations as Sue. That. First of all, one of my favorite memes is Sue Sylvester. It's the "I will create an environment so toxic."
So toxic. Yeah.
That works in every. A friend of mine just got back from Italy, and she posted, "I'm going to create a room that's so air conditioned." That's how good of a meme it is. It works in every situation. Can you talk about like getting that role and first working with Ryan Murphy?
Well, I had known Ryan for about 10 years at that point. I did Popular. I did a crazy crazy role on Popular. Ryan is got an imagination. And I did this crazy show, and then he invited me to be on Glee. Glee was already ready to go and almost cast, and Kevin Murphy, I forget, the guy who was the head of Fox. He said, Kevin Riley said, you need a villain. And Ryan said, she will be Sue Sylvester, and she will be played by Jane Lynch. I don't know if that actually happened, but I like to think that it did. And then it was, why am I forgetting names? Ian, what is Ian's last name? Huh?
Ian Brennan?
Brennan, thank you. God, he gave me life. I mean, I forget his name. Anyway, I was Ian Brennan was the basically the creator of Glee, and he wrote all of my lines. He completely created the character, and so he is the one who came up with I will create an environment so toxic, all that stuff. I'm not carrying picture ID anymore because people should know who I am. Smell your armpits. That's the smell of failure, and it's stinking up my office. I could go on and on and on. And then one, we said, I sold my house, and I salted the earth so nothing would grow there for 100 years because they asked me to pay their closing costs. So, Ian Brennan, thank you.
I mean, it's really fun to play the villain, I imagine. I mean, especially doing a comedic villain too. I mean, you can really dial it up.
Yeah, exactly. And then from one of the first lines in the pilot, I was passing out coffee to everybody. I was like trying to get in everybody's good graces, and I said something about how I like my coffee done a very specific way. I like it to be scalding. And that gives you such an idea. There's nothing middle of the road about this person.
Yeah.
I like it scalding.
So after Glee, you kind of transition a little bit. I want to talk about Hollywood Game Night, and then of course The Weakest Link as well, which is currently on and you're producing. I mean, what about a game show is really fun? I mean, I feel you get to play a different version of a character, really, especially with Weakest Link. I mean, that's very much a character, I like to think.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
it is.
You seem much nicer.
Yeah,
even backstage, she was very kind.
Yeah, I have my moments. Yeah. You saw a couple of them. Yeah. I was for Hollywood Game Night. Sean Hay. I had been to Sean's house for one of his game nights, and they are epic. Every room is a different game, and he's made them up. He's made all the games up, and you go from room to room, and it's cutthroat. I mean, I'm pretty competitive. I was scared.
Right.
I was frightened by these games and all the people that were invited. And then he came up with this idea, and we were having dinner one night. He said, "Would you want to host it? It's 6 on the air. We're going to do 6 on the air." And I said, "No." and then I called him the next day and I said, "Well, that was a stupid thing to say. Of course I'll do it." And I loved it. I loved doing it. Yeah, it was a blast. And so that led to The Weakest Link.
Weakest Link, which, again, like you're kind of playing a villain again.
Yeah.
I mean, very fun.
Yeah.
How do you, first of all, the show is associated with the previous host who was so identified.
Anne Robinson, yes.
Terrifying.
Oh yeah, she's for real.
Yeah, and British, so
yeah, right.
Extra.
That she's like a Harry Potter.
Yes.
Villain. She is serious as a heart attack.
Yeah. So
and it was a completely different game in that way that the contestants were afraid of her. The fear was real. So, and I have more of, I think, a twinkle in my eye.
Right. I mean, they'll recognize you, so that I think that there's a little bit of a comfort there.
Yeah,
right.
I
mean, how do you play, I guess, with the levels of how cutting or poking you can be?
Well, I think the most important thing to do is to make them feel, to let them just focus on playing the game as well as they can. And they know that I'm going to insult them, and they know the drill. And I have a executive producer named Stuart Krasnoff, and he is in my ear. And I'm deaf in one ear, so When I wear the earpiece, if you only talk to me if you have to, because if I'm listening to you here, I'm not hearing what's going on. But anyway, he will give me some lines, like he'll say, "Yeah, I can't even think of some of them, but there's some of them that are so vicious," and I can't say that. I can't say that. And then he's given me some delicious ones too. So I'm very grateful to him and
Yeah.
having him in my ear.
I also want to talk about, you're so prolific in your voice acting work, in animation and also narration, and
I do a lot of
you
animation.
do a lot
You
of it.
probably don't know, but
Yeah.
yeah, I live in Santa Barbara, and there's a tiny studio, and I have like the guy was basically retired. He was a rock and roll guy, and he's probably in his 70s. And I got him back into business. I said, "Keep this thing open because I do a lot of animation." He was like, "All right."
So, I mean, what's the appeal to you? I mean, I imagine it's an easy gig, especially if you can do it.
Yeah,
in Santa
I
Barbara.
love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's easy. It's not like big lucrative or anything, but
Right.
I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. It's I have like maybe 3 voices. And I just kind of decide in the moment which one I'm going to do. And I'm like a machine. I move fast. I'm pretty good at it. And so when you get to be, if you do a session with me, it's over really quickly.
Right.
So I think that's why I get a lot of work. But it's not like I have a lot of different voices or anything like that. I'm no Tom Kenny.
Right.
I have. If saying 3 is being generous with myself, I have 1.5 different voices.
Well, you establish yourself. I mean, you make it sound like you have more.
Yeah.
We'll say that. I also want to talk about returning to the stage, doing Broadway.
Yes.
That's such an achievement for an actor. I mean, was that something that you always saw as a goal that you wanted
Again,
to check
another
off?
preposterous fantasy
Yeah.
come true. Yeah. Well, I did 2 months, I think, of Annie in 2013. I played Miss Sannigan, and I loved it. I loved the actor's life. I loved the you're doing nothing else except kind of pampering yourself because you have a show. So it's the greatest thing. And so I enjoyed doing that. And so when the Funny Girl, I grew up with Funny Girl. I grew up listening to musicals. My mother loved them, and we really bonded on Funny Girl. And as I started getting jobs in show business, my mother would always call and leave a message and go, "Who taught her everything she knows?" So I got to sing that song. It was great.
Yeah. I mean, talking about Glee and also A Mighty Wind and incorporating music into your acting work. Were you always kind of like loving to sing
Yes.
and write? I mean, did you ever write songs? Did you ever want to just be a singer? Or
I've written terrible songs
Yeah,
that are
yeah.
usually funny, like not improv, but sketch comedy. I always ended up doing a song.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But was it always something you wanted to do to be able to do
Yeah.
both? Yeah.
Do you all know Kate Flannery, who played Meredith the Drunk in The Office? She's a really good friend of mine, and we met in Chicago. And she sounds like a 1950s studio singer. She has a voice on her. She's also a great harmonizer. I have an okay voice, but I'm a good harmonizer. And so we started singing together back in in Chicago when we were doing the Real Life Brady Bunch together. She played Alice for a while, and so when we came out to LA, we would do we'd do benefits, just the two of us would sing like a duet. And then we decided to put a show together, and we've been touring together since like 2013. We have a Christmas album called A Swingin' Little Christmas. We got a band, the Tony Guerrero Quintet. They're a bunch of Orange County guys that are like master jazz players. And, if you can play jazz, you can play anything. So we do kind of a late 50s, early 60s swingin' Christmas. And we do the show every year all over the country. And yeah, so it's great.
I mean, kind of talking about a performer's life. I mean, you do so many different things. I would say you're genre fluid in a way. You've done so much.
Genre fluid.
David Hemminson, the writer of The Holdovers, described himself to me as genre fluid when I did an interview with him. So I'm using that
I
for
like
everything.
that.
But you've done TV, you've done movies, you've done stage, and again, like talking about touring with a band. I mean, is that what you always sort of saw yourself doing? You kind of a Renaissance woman in a way, where you're doing a little bit of everything, or is it kind of the byproduct of being a working actor and needing?
It's the byproduct. Yeah, I never. There's something in me that always rebelled when someone would say, "You have to have goals." It never felt right to me.
Yeah,
And now I like do people say, how do I become an actor? Like I asked Ron Howard. I don't have an answer. I said, first of all, if I have an answer, it's don't have any goals. Don't have any goals and just stay right. And you just stay open to what. I mean, it's not like you're gonna sit on your butt all the time, but you have to have a little faith in the world that it's gonna roll in at your feet what you need. And a lot of times we're so busy writing out our goals, and there's something right in front of us. So that's why I said yes to there's no plan to my life. Like my memoir is called Happy Accidents because that's what it feels like. It feels like the less I plan, the better I am.
Yeah, so it's just about keeping. I mean, it's a yes and kind of
Yeah, which
mentality
is
about life.
the first
yeah,
rule of improv, right?
yeah,
Yeah. What is being delivered to you? What's in front of you?
yeah.
know?
I mean, when you look back on a career, I mean, did you have a moment when you're like this that you can identify as like this is when I made it, or
Yeah,
like the turning point?
right. I
moment for
mean,
you?
I think I just in terms of like people knowing who I am,
Mhm.
probably best in show. But there was a time in 2000, and that was like 2000.
Mhm.
But in 2005, I was doing this show called oh God, Love Something International. What was that?
Love Spring
Yeah,
International.
Love
Yes.
Spring International, which was it was on Lifetime, and it was a bunch of sketch comedy people. We were at the wrong station, the wrong network, and it was really funny. And we only did about 7 or 8 episodes, but it was party down fun. It was that kind of a thing, and I was having a blast. And then I was going to do Talladega Nights, and Borneo Virgin had just come out, and I was doing an independent movie called I Do and I Don't, which was another didn't end up doing. You probably never heard of it, but it was so much fun. But I was going from job to job and loving and ensemble stuff, loving it, and going, my God, I'm having a life. It felt so good. I felt like I had didn't have any doubts in myself. I knew that when I showed up, I never had like performance anxiety. I knew I was gonna be great. I never had any doubt. Whereas I kind of had that before, but I realized I was just in a really beautiful flow of life
Yeah.
and really enjoying it.
And were you able to maintain that kind of optimism?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I think also, to talk about the people you've worked with so many incredible people and so many incredible people multiple times.
yeah.
Did getting to a point in your career where you're kind of working with the same regular collaborators kind of boosts that
Yeah.
optimism? Like we're all in this together. We've all like, again, like to bring it back to Chicago, Kate Flannery,
Mhm.
you go back very far with her
Right.
and look where you are today.
Yeah.
So like, when you're watching kind of like your cohort rise alongside you,
Yeah.
is that also
It is. It's really
Yeah.
nice. Like all the people in Party Down now have really big
Yeah.
careers. It's really nice to see. And the whole thing of being a part of an ensemble and y- y- I remember Adam McKay said the best joke wins.
Mm.
And so even though it was Talladega Nights was Will Ferrell's movie, sometimes I got the joke, and sometimes he would give it to me.
Right.
It was, yeah, it's just really
Yeah.
cool.
I mean, does that affect now how you pick a project? Who else is involved? Because there are people that you want to work
Yeah,
with.
I usually don't say no to anything,
Yeah.
but I'm also really lucky that everything that I'm invited to do is quite good. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, not saying no. I mean, is it kind of the actor's mentality of like, I want to work, I need to work, or
I
is it
don't
just you?
have that anymore.
Yeah. I mean, you seem like you're just excited to be busy.
I am. And what's interesting right now is I always have like if you said, what are you doing now, Jane? I don't have anything.
Right.
This is the first time in a long time that I'm going to go to New York and do this and that, but I just finished Only Murders in the Building and I don't have anything. And it's okay.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, are you like, you're ready for the vacation? Or how long?
Yeah,
How
I
long
am.
will it last before you're like, this is not okay?
Well, during the strike,
Yeah.
I was like, it's kind of nice to take some time off.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah.
But by the end of the strike, I was ready to go back
Yeah,
to
yeah,
work
yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How, in terms of how you pick a project or a role beyond, the people that you're working with, I mean, what kind of
jumps out to you in a really good script that you're excited about when
Well,
you
I
read
guess
it?
if it's first of all, if it's somebody I know who's directing it,
Mhm.
and maybe it's not on the page, you'll do it anyway
Right.
because you know that it'll be on the page at some point. Um, it's a lot about what's on the page.
Mhm. Has there been? Can you think of a script where you that really, really surprised you by how well written or how great the character was on the page?
Oh yeah, Sophie Lennon for Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I read that. I remember. Yeah, I remember seeing the poster, the billboard, on Sunset Boulevard, and I was like, I want to be in that show. And it was like within a week. I'm powerful, you guys. I don't know how it. I don't know how it happened.
Just
But
some witchery, yeah.
no, I wonder if I'm powerful or if there is just a trajectory to life that you look at something and it looks familiar because it's coming your way. So I
Yeah.
don't know exactly how it is. Yeah, I don't know what comes first, the chicken or the egg in that.
Right.
But anyway, and then they sent me this script, and I mean, this is a character who though has it's in the late 50s, and she's playing kind of a Phyllis Diller character, which is in those days, female comics had to make jokes about how ugly and fat
Mhm.
they were, and how they had to be kind of like ugly.
Yeah.
And that's what Phyllis Diller did, and who was a very beautiful woman. And so I kind of Phyllis Diller was my impetus because I like could hear her voice in this. And then she becomes this. She's an actress.
Mhm.
She fancies herself kind of a classically trained actress, unlike myself back in 1982 in Chicago at the Chicago Shakespeare Company, and she feels like she is above this thing that she feels she was forced to have to do, and she's quite she's educated and massively insecure.
Mhm.
And I thought of not that this character is actually massively insecure, but I thought of the Baroness in The Sound of Music,
Mhm.
Eleanor Parker.
Mhm.
So she was kind of my role model um, for Sophie Lennon, the actress.
Right.
And so, I mean, it was one of those things. It's on the page, and already I know what I'm going to do.
Right.
I mean, I knew how I was going to play that. And so they put me in the fat suit, and I'm up on a stage, and it's like an audience, this many people, background, and I'm supposed to do my act. And so Amy and Dan don't know what I'm going to do.
Mhm.
And so they weren't even there. I think Dan was directing it, so Dan was there, but Amy wasn't even there. And so they were videoing it and sending it to Amy, and she was like, "Yeah, that's fine, that's fine." And I didn't know they were doing that, but I just went up there and did it. I did like a show for the background artists, and nobody had seen me do 1 ounce of it yet.
Right.
So I was like, it was I thought pretty ballsy on my part that I just went up there and did it. I was like, I'm either doing it or I'm not doing it, and I came all the way from California to New York. I got to do it.
Yeah. I mean, did that take you back at all to like your stage work?
Yes.
Being back there. And,
Oh yeah, where you just go out on stage and go, I've got this character that I'm going to work on, that I'm working on, and I'm going to do it now.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy because I can't imagine that show without you in it. And maybe it's the Julie and Julia picture. It's a very period specific.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Like again, like kind of
Yeah.
insecure villain.
Yeah.
That is like so fun to watch. Because
Yeah.
You know exactly where it comes from.
Yeah. Yeah.
But just so much interiority to pull out.
Yeah.
As an actor.
Oh yeah.
Which I feel like comedy can be very surface level, and so maybe
It can be, and then it's not funny. Then it's not comedy.
Yeah.
But Amy and Dan they're great writers.
Yeah.
Oh my God! How about Alex in that? Can you see anybody else playing Alex Borstein's part?
Mm-mm. Yeah.
She had to audition like 3 times. I heard. I was like, what? And they knew her from the Gilmore Girls. Yeah, she's I can't. And can you imagine anybody not? Everybody's perfect for their roles.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you looking back on like maybe a specifically or particularly challenging role? Like maybe a scene. I mean, it could be even a guest performance or something. But like, even when you're reading it and you're working through it, and like, were there moments where you were like, "This is not coming together, and I can't figure it out exactly"? Do you have tactics for when something like that happens? When you face an acting challenge of trying to figure out where you're supposed to be?
You know what always and then it keeps me safe from that, is that I always go to the truth of what's going on in the character. And if it's not working, how does truth not work? So I won't feel badly about it. It might be the wrong truth for this, but I'm going to bring something real. And if it's if it's if it's not on the page, it's not on the page,
Right.
and it's not your fault. But yeah, I guess I have a lot of confidence. I really do, and not in everything, but in this I do. Like I understand emotional truth,
Yeah.
and I have that is the thing that I always try to carry into everything I do. And you're safe when you do that.
Yeah.
You know.
Are you someone who like will go to a writer to ask for like if it's not on the page?
Yeah.
You try to investigate where it is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I will ask. It seems to me that this person is struggling with this, and if the writer's like, yeah, that means that they didn't think too
Yeah,
much
I had no
about it.
idea.
But most of them really do appreciate
Yeah.
that. They want to talk about it.
Yeah. When I talk to writers, especially in television, I'm fascinated by like the kind of the symbiotic relationship between actors and writers because on TV, you sign up for a project and 3 years from now, it could be your character could be doing something insane that you're like, where did this come from?
Right. Yeah. Glee,
So,
the last season of Glee. I was Pepe Le Pew in the last season of Glee. They shaved my head in the last season and I made the mistake of saying, Ryan, I'm a little bored right now. And he went, all right, lady.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Too confident,
But it was
maybe.
great. It was really fun.
But sorry, I sort of lost my train of thought there.
Sorry, I went off on
No, it's fine.
tangent.
Oh, so the relationship with a writer and an actor. I always like to ask the writers, even though it's sort of a hack question, like, how are you with improvising from your actors and coming up with new ideas? Because I feel like, especially from my experience, knowing actors in Chicago who did a lot of theater that was collaborative with the writer, a lot of the actors were used to coming up with their own character details and figuring out like the rhythms of how you talk to one another on stage. And that's something that I think is like part of the theatrical experience of figuring that out. But when it comes for working on screen, how does that relationship work with the actor and the writer where you're like, I have an idea, or maybe they pick up on something that you're already doing that
Yeah, that
you
happens.
recognize shows up.
Yeah, that happens where, like you're doing something and you say, what if, I mean, you don't want to go off on
Too
a
crazy.
thing,
Yeah.
and also I would say, like, sometimes a director will say, hey, if you want to improvise this, you can. It's like, I'm either improvising or I'm saying your lines.
Right.
I kind of can't do both.
Right.
And even if I do have an idea for something, I'm going to set it. I'm going to actually craft the line. I'm not going to just go blue.
Right.
But I think that especially on Glee, because Ian wrote so specifically, there were a couple of things where I wanted to change some references. Like he always came up with funny names of schools, and I said, "What if we call it blah blah blah?" And he said, "Nope."
So I'm curious, like, kind of just generally speaking, you talked about getting some great advice from Ron Howard.
Yeah.
Has there been other pieces of advice throughout your career from people that you've looked up to, or even just people that you were surprised would offer something like that?
Harrison Ford told me to make sure I keep my mouth shut. He said, I don't care how smart you are, you look stupid with your mouth open. Because I guess I was like, anyway.
That was an eventful day with Harrison
Yeah, it was.
Ford.
I thought it was great advice,
Yeah.
though, and is that you do. If your mouth is agape, you look dumb.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was supposed to be a liver specialist.
Have you extended?
A nephrologist.
Yeah, exactly. Have you extended that advice to other actors or?
I haven't. No, I haven't.
Okay, because I feel like that's a pretty valuable.
That's a
lesson
pretty
to
good
learn,
one.
Yeah.
Now let me think if I've got any advice from anybody. Oh my gosh. Well, you kind of learn watching them. Like I learned a lot watching Meryl Streep. She and she was playing a huge character, the Julia Child character, and her 100% commitment to that. Oh, it was just a joy to watch.
Yeah.
just a joy to watch. And now she's on Only Murders in the Building, and I haven't worked with her, but I watched her do a couple of scenes. I was sitting at the InVideo Village where you can watch the monitors. She's fucking amazing. Her choices are all, and she's not playing a big, but she makes these huge, weird, totally grounded in the truth choices, and she makes everybody else better. She's just, she's really our best. She's really a great actor.
And I can't imagine watching that just in person.
Yeah.
Like that experience of watching something that we just get to see on screen.
Yeah.
I mean, what is that?
Watch her do it every time.
Yeah.
Every time it's motivated. It's not like she's doing it completely different.
Right.
But it lives every time.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, she's just amazing. And she's so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
She's Mike Nichols said once that it looks like she swallowed a light bulb because she's so lit up. I mean, she's
Yeah.
she's something.
Is there a TV show or a movie that you made that you were so very, very excited about, and then the excitement didn't kind of pan out?
Yeah, I do and I don't. That with that independent film that I told you about. Oh,
Yeah.
we had so much fun making it. It was about what if you're Catholic and you're getting married, you pre-Canaan. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, the
Pre-Canaan?
counseling. Yeah.
Right. So I was a alcoholic, drunk pre-Cana Catholic with my husband, who was we were just awful people, and we were kind of shepherding this young couple, Brian Callen, and I forget the girl's name, Alexi. But anyway, this was like 2006, and it was hilarious, and we made shit up, and we had so much. We were Catholic too, so we knew all this stuff, and we knew the silly songs, and we had so much fun. And it was not edited well. It was an independent film, so people probably wouldn't have, but it maybe could have gone to the festivals or something. But it was just terrible. It broke all of our hearts when we were watching it. Like,
Yeah.
it had no pace.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was very sad.
I mean, how do you come out of something like that?
Well,
Where you're
usually,
just, like, the
I don't.
disappointment.
I usually walk away from a project, and sometimes I don't even see it.
Okay.
And but I loved this.
Mm.
This was a hard one. And I can't think of anything else that I was like disappointed with.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, because everything else has been just a wild success.
Yeah.
Speaking of walking away from a project, I mean, when I love asking this question of actors. When you're in a role, I mean, when you're playing Sue Sylvester for several years.
Yeah.
Do you leave it work at work? Is it like a 9 to 5 thing?
Oh,
where you can turn it
absolutely.
away. You
Yeah.
can. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have a specific way of like kind of shutting that off, or is it just the
It's
nature
an
of the
easy thing to do. Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of like improvising, I mean, I would love to hear more about like what improvising as a skill gives an actor when it comes to even just reading a line that's written for them and interacting with other people on set. I mean, you can tell me how it worked, how it's helpful on stage, how it's helpful on film, but I feel like there's something
The
there.
spontaneity and really being open and willing to be thrown off your game. And as long as you're rooted in the truth of something, that's the first thing I go for is where is this person emotionally?
Right.
And then you can't go wrong.
Right.
You just can't. When I was in I was probably in the touring company. It was around that time, like 1987. I was a host on the first home shopping network that was in Glencoe, Illinois, and I did it was 24 hours. It was called America's Shopping Place, and I did the like 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. and we took live phone calls.
Oh, wow.
Imagine who's calling you at
In Glencoe, Illinois.
in Glencoe,
2
Illinois.
a.m.
And to get there, I had to rent a car, and there was this company called Rent-A-Wreck. And I would drive like a 1978 Pacer to do this. And I had to hold forth on cubic zirconia tennis bracelets for 15 or 20 minutes, talking about touting its virtues. So I learned on my feet
Right.
how to fill a moment.
Yeah.
And we had fun. I had a co-host, and she was a blast. There was a guy too, and we really enjoyed ourselves. But I really learned how to, listen, and I learned more about improvising doing that
Oh, yeah.
than anything else. But I will say this about Second City improvisation is it's a very masculine form, and there are some, like Bonnie Hunt is brilliant at it, but it's kind of a male thing. It's kind of you want to get to the orgasm, if you will. You want to get to the joke. Excuse my French. There's a little girl up here. She probably doesn't even know what that means. So it's like you kind of want to joke, 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 joke. And the Christopher Guest kind of improvisation is more feminine. It meanders. And he doesn't want joke, joke, joke.
Right.
He wants behavior. He wants, people kind of rooted in the truth who know how to make a situation funny. But he doesn't care about the joke. In fact, he will roll his eyes and not care for it. Like I've seen, people come in and they're like, well, they'll have it like Fred Willard, God bless him. That's what he does best.
Right. Yeah.
But you have to be that level of expertise for Chris to let you get away with coming in with your jokes pre-planned. So it's more of a meandering. And once I learned that was the deal, like I learned that in Best in Show, that he also runs the camera forever. So you can really just take your time and breathe. And I always had some stuff just in my back pocket ready to go to say, but you really got to kind of lay it out, and he put it all together in editing. So they're two different kinds of things, but I mean, and they're both great.
Yeah.
But I wasn't good at the Second City kind of like, let's
Right.
get to the joke.
Yeah, comedy in general is so male dominated. I'm curious, especially coming from Second City, which is, kind of notoriously at this point, misogynist.
Not anymore.
Yeah, not anymore.
It's
But
it's really I think
a lot
it's
has
3 men and
changed.
3 women in the
yeah,
companies
but
now.
in the
Yeah, a lot
those
has
early
changed.
days,
In the early days for sure.
what was it like navigating those spaces? Is it kind of
I didn't
like
notice it
putting
because
on-
I
yeah.
don't feel like a girl.
Right.
I don't go through life. I'm kind of genderless. I always kind of have been. So what is it like being a woman in comedy? I
Right.
don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the best answer, honestly. Kind of as we wrap up, I wanted to know, we've talked about advice, we've talked about all the people you've worked with. How would you like to be remembered? Is there a role in particular that you're like, that's what I want people to think of when they think of me
No,
first?
I've never
No.
had thoughts like
No.
that. No.
But is there, do you have your favorites for sure that you hope are...
My favorite. Sophie Lennon, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm loving doing Saz Pataki in Only Murders in the Building.
Mhm.
And thank you. I'm in the murder victim this season, so I'm
Ooh.
in it a lot more. Oh, spoiler alert.
They'll forget.
so-
It won't come out till next year.
So I'm in a lot of flashbacks. I'm a ghost. Oh, it's so fun. It's so fun, and they've given me, and now again, like it's on the page, they have kind of expanded who she is, deepened
Mhm.
who Saz is, and she's kind of guileless. She's just kind of wonderful. She's doesn't have like a cynical bone in her body.
Mhm.
She's I just have loved playing her.
Yeah. Is there a role that you would want to go back to?
I would love to go back to Sue Sylvester.
Yeah.
Like about 10 years, 15 years has passed, and she's a little more stealthy. I always thought Sue Sylvester is the star of her own movie, and it's in
yeah.
her head.
Yeah.
And there's narration, and there's literally some episodes where I have narration where I'm like, I am like a gazelle. I would love that. And now she's a little bit older, and and to see how that is.
Yeah. What do you think she's doing now?
Oh, she's so deep in her narration. She's so deep. Yeah. She always, yes, absolutely. Not just Glee Club now, anything
The
that
world.
has innocence and goodness in it. I will destroy you.
Is there something that you wish you knew when you were starting out?
Oh.
Even as a kid.
Yeah, oh gosh.
What do you wish you could go back and... I think about this myself. Like,
Yeah.
if I could go back and tell my 12-year-old self, A, that I'm sitting here and doing this, insane. Do you have anything like that where you've had moments where you're like, oh my God, if I only knew.
I wish I hadn't had to suffer, and I'm sure you all feel that.
Yeah.
The insecurities and gosh, it you know. I almost want to say we waste so much time, but I think that's kind of the gig.
Yeah.
Being a human being is that we go through this suffering, and we get conditioned by society, and then we spend the last part of our life hopefully letting all that stuff go. But I have two grandnephews, and I get videos from them, and it's nothing has touched them yet.
Mm.
They're a year and a half, and the other guy's an infant. And there's the wonder, and you have it too. You're young enough to have it too. You're probably starting to get conditioned, but stay exactly as you are now at that. Allow yourself to have that smile, that you just see everything is brand new to them and exciting, and no one has told them, oh no, don't do that.
Right.
That's boys don't cry, and it's just such a joy to get these videos from them and see them.
Right.
They're so open and free and untouched.
Right. Well, do you feel like part of being an actor is trying to get back to that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do, and I just love the whole metaphor of life being like a play.
Mhm.
I mean, Shakespeare had it. He said, "We're all men and women, merely players," and we're on a stage, and when, like you say, when I'm done with a role, can I walk away from it? Yeah, and life should be that too. Like we undergo these pains and these sufferings and these disappointments, and it's just a part of the play.
Mhm.
It's all part of the play. We're all
Right. Can you think of anything you haven't done that you're desperate to do?
No.
No bucket list items?
No. It's like I have no plans. I have no goals. There's nothing I want to do.
Vacation, maybe? I don't know.
Do what?
Vacation?
Yeah, I do. Well, I don't like taking vacations. I have a cancer. I stay at home. I love being at home.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm married to someone who's as much of a monk as I am.
Mm.
I go to bed at like 7:00, and I'm up at like 4, which I'm not thrilled with getting up when it's dark.
Right.
I wish I could sleep a little later, but I can't. And she's the opposite. She goes to bed at around 1, and then she doesn't wake up, and she has to like force herself out of bed at like 10:00, going, and
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I wish I could sleep like that. But we're perfect for each other. We both kind of just exist in our own worlds, but together,
Right.
which is kind of nice.
I mean, when you're not working, I mean, what's your downtime like? Do you watch television? Is it something you're just like, no,
I watched
work.
it too much, I think, as a kid, that I'm done with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never watch television.
Well, how do you turn your brain off?
YouTube.
Okay.
My algorithm is just feeding me.
What
I
is
just love
what is on Jane Lynch's algorithm?
Near-death experience,
Okay.
non-duality, philosophy. There's a show called New Thinking Aloud. Are you familiar with Jeffrey Mishlove? Go home and get on that. Subscribe to that channel. He's he's just an amazing guy. He's an ascendant being, is what I think he is. But he's an interviewer, and he interviews people that are in the paranormal, and also the remote viewers from Stanford. Do you remember that there were these remote viewers, and they were part of the military, and they would actually, through visualization, go to enemy territory, and it's just pretty amazing stuff. I think that Shakespeare says there are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are in our philosophies. I think there's a lot more that goes on with us than we know, and I'm very interested in finding out what that is.
Yeah. I mean, a curiosity, I think, is so important to be an actor.
Yeah.
Like a sense of what's out there. What else can I learn?
Yeah, I have great emotional curiosity.
Mhm.
Like and I like to try to figure out where people are coming from.
Right. Yeah.
And then when you see like a kid and how pure they are, it's just pure joy. Just I love
The
purity.
opposite of Sue Sylvester. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
but you scratch the surface of Sue, and it's there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again so much for this lovely conversation.
No, it was
what
great.
a thrill to chat with you today.
Oh,
and
back at you.
congratulations.
I've
Thank
really
you.
enjoyed talking to you, and yeah, you've got a genuine curiosity
Oh,
about
thank
me.
you.
And I I appreciate that so much.
Well, thank you so much. Everybody, Jane Lynch.
Thank you.